They say some wishes are innocent until they're not. It was just a quiet summer evening, the kind that lingers like a memory, when my nephew Evan made a wish that would change everything. We were gathered around the patio table, warm light spilling from the kitchen, laughter echoing as the grill hissed behind us. My sister Rachel was teasing him about turning 19, and I was half listening until he spoke. I wish I had someone who really gets me. Someone who knows how to love. Everyone laughed. I didn't, because Evan wasn't smiling. He wasn't joking. He was staring straight at me. Steady, serious, like he wasn't making a wish at all, but confessing a secret. And in that split second, something shifted inside me. Something small and dangerous. A breath caught in my throat. A tremor under the skin. I looked away, told myself I was imagining things, that it was just a passing thought from a lonely woman stuck in a lifeless marriage. Daniel, my husband, hadn't looked at me like I mattered in years. We slept in the same bed, but we might as well have been strangers on opposite ends of a silent room. And then Evan arrived, soft-spoken, thoughtful, kind. He saw me. Not just with his eyes, but with his attention. And that wish, it wasn't just words thrown into the air, it stuck. I wish I had said nothing. I wish I hadn't felt that ache when he looked at me. But I did. And that was the moment that cracked something deep inside me. A single wish, a simple sentence, and the beginning of everything I never expected. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I lay next to Daniel in the dark. His back was to me, like always. The silence between us was thick, familiar. But tonight, it felt different. I couldn't stop thinking about Evan, about his words, about the way he looked at me, as if he already knew the parts of me I tried to keep buried. I told myself it was nothing, that I was tired, that I missed being noticed. But deep down, I knew something had cracked open. The next morning, Evan greeted me in the kitchen with a smile that lingered a second too long. "Morning, Aunt Claire," he said, voice soft, eyes searching. He asked how I slept, and for once, someone actually cared about the answer. Daniel was already out the door, a quick nod, a distracted kiss on the forehead, and gone. Evan stayed. He started showing up beside me more, helping with dishes, asking questions about my favorite books, about love, about life. There was something intentional in the way he spoke, something unspoken in every glance, and I noticed. God, I noticed. I started brushing my hair again, wearing lipstick even if I wasn't leaving the house. Not for Daniel. He wouldn't have noticed if I dyed my hair green. But Evan noticed. He saw when I wore that old summer dress that hugged in just the right places. He saw me. I hated how much that meant. One night, Rachel was out with friends, and Daniel had passed out on the couch, still in his work clothes. Evan and I ended up on the patio watching an old black and white film. Our shoulders brushed. He leaned in to say something, and I found myself watching his lips. Just for a moment. But I looked. And worse, I didn't look away. A line had been drawn, faint and fragile. I told myself I hadn't crossed it. Not yet. But the truth was, I was already standing at the edge, and I wasn't sure I wanted to step back. I was 38, and life had somehow drained the color from me without making a sound. There was a time when I was full of light, laughter that came easily, dreams that felt within reach. But somewhere along the years, the sparkle dulled. I didn't notice it happening. It was slow, quiet, a soft erosion, like the tide pulling grains of sand until all that's left is something hollow. Daniel, my husband, wasn't cruel. He didn't yell or cheat, not that I knew of. He paid the bills, showed up to family dinners, asked if I needed anything when he remembered to. But he wasn't there. Not really. We shared a bed, but not a connection. We passed each other like ghosts in a house that once knew warmth. He used to touch me like I mattered. Now, even his glances seemed accidental. His eyes slid past me like I'd become part of the wallpaper. We didn't fight, not even that. There was no passion left to ignite anything, just the kind of silence that suffocates slowly. When I lost my job last fall, I thought maybe it would bring us closer. That maybe Daniel would ask how I was doing, hold me, tell me everything would be okay. But instead, he sank deeper into work. Longer hours, later nights, vague excuses that didn't quite add up. I didn't question him. I didn't have the energy. I stopped asking for connection. I stopped expecting it. And in that numbness, I found routines that didn't need feeling. I cooked, cleaned, smiled when I had to. I learned to disappear in plain sight. And then came the summer. And with it, Evan. He walked into that quiet house and brought with him something I hadn't felt in years. Presence, attention, light. I didn't know it yet, but something inside me was already beginning to wake. Rachel arrived that summer like a burst of laughter, all energy and sunshine, dragging in her suitcase, her stories, and Evan. He had grown. The last time I saw him, he was still a lanky teenager, all elbows and quiet smiles. But now, at 19, Evan had become something else entirely. Tall, self-assured, with eyes that didn't just glance, they lingered. He had this stillness about him, a softness that didn't try too hard but stayed with you long after he'd left the room. When he saw me, he smiled, really smiled, and said, "You look great, Aunt Claire." And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I believed it. Evan didn't breeze past me like everyone else. He didn't nod distractedly or offer surface-level pleasantries. He asked how I was and waited, really waited. He listened when I spoke. He laughed at my jokes, remembered little things I said. Daniel never did that. Evan would offer to help set the table, wash the dishes, bring me a glass of water without asking. He complimented my cooking, told me I had a calming voice. At first, I chalked it up to his kind nature, but as the days passed, I realized it wasn't just kindness. It was intention. He saw me. Not the tired woman in the mirror, not the wife fading into the background. He looked at me like I was someone, not just someone's sister or someone's wife or someone's aunt. Just Claire. And that feeling, that terrible, beautiful feeling, it lit a spark I didn't even know was still inside me. Evan's presence turned up the volume in a life that had been on mute for far too long. It started in the smallest of ways, the kind of moments you'd miss if you weren't starving for them. Evan began to linger near me. In the kitchen while I rinsed vegetables, in the living room where he'd sit just a little closer than necessary. He'd pass me something, a dish, the remote, and his fingers would graze mine, pause, then slowly pull away. Accidental, maybe. But I felt it. Every time. He'd ask questions that weren't casual. What's your favorite book? Do you believe in soulmates? Was there ever a time you felt truly understood? The kind of questions that peeled me open, layer by layer. No one had asked me those things in years. He listened like my answers mattered. Like I mattered. I found myself waiting for those conversations, leaning into them, letting them pull me from the fog I'd been living in. He started giving me compliments I didn't know how to hold. Your eyes look tired, but they're still beautiful. You talk like someone who wants to understand, not just be heard. You're different, in a good way. I laughed them off at first, blushed, changed the subject, but I remembered every word. One night, we watched a movie on the patio while Daniel snored on the couch and Rachel was out with friends. Our shoulders brushed. I didn't move. He leaned in to tell me something funny, I think, and I found myself watching his lips. Just for a second. But I didn't look away. Later, I stared at the ceiling fans spinning above our bed and whispered to myself, "This is nothing. It doesn't mean anything." But it did. Because every glance, every word, every moment between Evan and me felt like waking up in a world I thought I'd lost. And I wasn't ready to go back to sleep. The storm rolled in just after dark, heavy and slow, rumbling across the sky like a warning. Rachel had gone out of town for a weekend work trip. Daniel was away at some conference, a vague note on the counter the only sign he'd left. And just like that, it was only Evan and me, alone in the house, rain tapping against the windows like a secret trying to get in. We decided on a movie, something we'd both seen before. I poured a glass of wine, just one, I told myself. And he made popcorn. The power flickered halfway through, then died completely, leaving us in a hush of darkness. "I'll get candles," he said. A few minutes later, the room was bathed in soft, flickering light, the air warm and still. He sat down next to me, closer this time. Our knees touched. I didn't move. Outside, thunder cracked. Inside, it was so quiet I could hear the breath catch in my chest when he turned to me and said, "You deserve more than this, Claire. You always have." I didn't speak. "I see you," he said, "even when no one else does." He leaned in, slowly, like he was giving me every chance to stop it, and I didn't. When his lips touched mine, the world didn't explode. It didn't fall apart. It just paused. Time, breath, memory, Everything suspended in that fragile, dangerous moment, and I let it happen. His hand moved gently to the back of my neck, drawing me in. The ache inside me, the one I'd buried for years, split wide open. It wasn't supposed to happen. I knew that. I wasn't just someone's wife. I was his aunt. I should have pulled away, should have said no. But I didn't. In that kiss, I didn't feel like a wife or an aunt or a woman who should have known better. I felt wanted, alive, chosen, and in that second, nothing else mattered. The morning after, the house felt quieter than usual, like it knew something had changed. Evan smiled at me in the kitchen, easy and unbothered, like the world hadn't shifted beneath our feet the night before. He handed me a cup of coffee, and when his fingers brushed mine, they lingered. I didn't pull away. That was the beginning of everything unraveling. He started texting me, just small things at first. Good morning. Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. Sometimes I replied. Sometimes I deleted the messages before I even opened them. But no matter what I did, the guilt clung to me like a second skin. Rachel returned home 2 days later. The first thing she said when she stepped inside was, "Something feels off in here." I laughed too quickly and blamed the weather. But she looked at me, really looked, and for a moment, I thought she saw everything. Evan played it cool. Too cool, maybe. Same tone, same casual smile, but his eyes, those eyes, they kept searching for something, a sign, a next step. And I didn't know what to give him. Daniel came home the same night, dropped his bag, kissed my forehead like he was checking a box, and sat down to dinner without a word. Halfway through the meal, he looked up and said, "You've been distant lately. You okay?" He wasn't angry. He wasn't jealous. He just looked small, like he knew something had shifted but couldn't name it. I blamed the rain. Again. After that, I started pulling away. I stopped joining family dinners, hid in the kitchen, washed dishes that didn't need washing. I avoided eye contact, avoided conversations, avoided myself. Every time Rachel spoke about Evan's future, his dreams, his college plans, I smiled and nodded, but inside, I was falling apart. I could barely breathe with the weight of what we'd done. And across the room, Evan still looked at me like nothing had changed. But everything had... It was Rachel's idea, a casual request over coffee. "Evan's got a college tour next weekend," she said. "I can't go with him. Would you mind taking him instead?" I nodded too quickly, smiled too easily, said of course, like it was nothing, like it was normal. But nothing about it was normal. The campus was buzzing with energy, students laughing, music drifting from open dorm windows. Evan walked beside me, relaxed, excited, alive in a way I hadn't seen before. And then I saw her. A girl his age, bright-eyed, confident. She bumped into him at a booth, made a joke, and he laughed. That laugh I thought was mine. She touched his arm. He didn't pull away. I stood a few steps back, watching it unfold like a scene from someone else's life. But the ache in my chest was real, jealousy, sharp and sudden, and right behind it, shame. What was I doing? What had I let this become? I crossed my arms, tried to steady my breathing, tried not to feel. But I couldn't stop the questions flooding in. Was this love? Or had I just needed to feel wanted again? Had I mistaken his attention for something deeper? Had I been chasing a feeling, not a person? Because in that moment, watching Evan laugh with a girl who hadn't been bruised by life yet, I didn't see a man I loved. I saw a boy who was never mine to begin with. And I saw myself, standing there, older, lonelier, lost in a fantasy that never should have left my imagination. The worst part? I didn't feel betrayed by him. I felt betrayed by myself. I'd played the confession over in my head 100 times. In the shower, driving, lying awake at night. The words always got stuck somewhere between fear and shame. How do you tell your sister that you betrayed her? That you blurred the lines with her son? I didn't know where to begin. And then suddenly, I didn't have to. It was a quiet morning. Rachel wandered into the kitchen, coffee in one hand, a notebook in the other. Her brow was furrowed. She didn't look angry. Just confused. "Did you know Evan keeps a journal?" she asked, holding it up casually like it was any other notebook. I was looking for my charger in his room and found this under the bed. My stomach dropped. She flipped it open and started to read, aloud as if it were harmless. And then she stopped. Her voice faltered. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't speak again for several seconds. "What is this, Claire?" she finally asked. Not yelling, not accusing. Just broken. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The truth sat heavy on my tongue, too poisonous to say, too late to take back. The journal had told her everything. Not in vivid detail, but enough. Enough to destroy what little innocence remained between us. Rachel stared at me like I was someone she didn't recognize. Her face crumpled, not in rage, but in disbelief. Hurt deeper than anger. A kind of heartbreak I wouldn't wish on anyone. I wanted to beg, to explain. But there were no explanations that could fix this. The spiral had begun, and there was no going back. Evan moved on. Of course he did. He's young. His life is still stretching wide ahead of him like an open road, untouched and full of promise. I see glimpses of him now and then, smiling in photos Rachel posts online, laughing with friends, arms slung casually around a girl who looks like she still believes love is simple. He looks free, and I haven't felt free in a long time. Since that night, something inside me has gone quiet. Like a part of me burned out and left only ash. I don't cry every day. I don't punish myself out loud, but I carry it with me. The weight of what I did, the ache of what I lost, the shame of who I became. Daniel never asked, not directly, but he knew. I could see it in the way he stopped trying, in the way he started sleeping in the guest room without explanation, as if we'd both silently agreed to end things without saying the words. Rachel hasn't looked at me the same since. Her eyes used to be full of mischief and warmth. Now they hold questions, walls, distance. We still speak sometimes about things that don't matter, weather, errands, bills, but everything important lives in the silence between us. And me, I look in the mirror, and some days I don't recognize the woman staring back. Other days I do, and that's somehow worse. I didn't tell this story for forgiveness. I told it because I know what it feels like to stand at the edge. Toes curled over the line, heart begging for something real while your conscience pleads for you to walk away. I didn't walk away. And I've been standing in that consequence ever since. I didn't tell this story to be forgiven. I told it for the ones standing where I once stood, right on the edge. For the women staring into a quiet mirror, wondering if being seen, even just for a moment, is worth everything they might lose. For the ones who feel invisible, untouched, unheard, and then suddenly, someone looks at them like they matter. That feeling, being wanted, being noticed, it's powerful. Addictive. It wraps itself around your loneliness like comfort until you can't tell where the hunger ends and the danger begins. But here's what I've learned. There are lines that, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. Moments that may feel small but echo for years. A single kiss, a glance held too long, a secret you thought you could manage, they can carve wounds so deep they never fully close. Love, when it's real, is beautiful. But love that requires betrayal to bloom? That kind of love doesn't stay. It takes. It burns. It leaves you looking at your reflection and wondering how you got so far from the person you used to be. I live with that now. Not every day is agony. Some days I laugh. Some days I forget. For a little while. But the cracks remain. The weight never fully lifts. So if you're standing at the edge, if you're about to let that look last a second too long, if you're telling yourself no one will ever find out, stop. Step back. Because sometimes the most painful scars are the ones we give ourselves. Maybe one day, I'll find the courage to make things right. Or at least, less wrong. Maybe Rachel and I will sit across from each other again without the weight of everything unsaid. Maybe I'll learn to forgive myself piece by piece. But I don't know if that day will ever come. What I do know is this. The heart is complicated. It craves connection, even when it shouldn't. It can confuse attention for affection, desire for love, and sometimes it leads us to places we can't return from. If you're still listening, ask yourself, what would you have done? Would you have stopped it? Or would you have made the same mistake, hoping no one would ever know? There's no easy ending to this story, only choices, consequences, and silence. And somewhere out there, someone else standing at the edge,